Hello. Welcome to Season Two's Episode 4 of Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and it's a good idea for everyone to be able to calm themselves, especially when times are tough and individually or society is having trouble calming down. Seems to be chaos, seems to be dislike and discontent. These things can divide us and not unite us. And we have to be united if we are going to be successful, because you don't raise yourself up by stepping on someone else's neck. What you do is work together, but you can only work together when you're calm. I only make good decisions when I'm calm. And when I get agitated, anxious, or angry, I tend to make poorer decisions. So my job for me is to calm myself down. And so this show is designed to share techniques, tools and techniques that can help us calm down. My go-to happens to be deep breathing. One or two deep breaths can help me to remain relaxed, and I can try to become peaceful, even serene. And when I'm peaceful, serene, calm down, and centered, I make good decisions and things that are intuitively obvious to me that used to baffle me. So these are the types of things that I think society at large and individuals can do better, do a better job and help each other rather than wind each other up, help each other calm down. Now, if you want to see previous episodes, scrolling across the bottom of the screen, you can go to AIRU.tv. It stands for Addicts in Recovery United.tv. And this is especially true for people who are recovering from addictions. And I know this firsthand. In recovery, you can't allow resentments or anything else, shame, fear. These types of things are just negative vibrations, and they bring you down. They don't lift you up. And so how do you lift yourself up? Well, the show is divided into different segments. This is the introduction, and then we'll have the first segment with our anger management specialist, Rick, from Los Angeles. And then we'll go to Yudhithra, a yoga teacher and therapist who can help us learn techniques that are ancient, that have been practiced for centuries, millennia, to help people remain calm and to raise their consciousness so that they can become better people and treat others the way you want to be treated yourself. So these are the types of things. And if you want to talk to us, let's see if I can find it here. Here we go. This is how you can reach us. If you have any tools or techniques that help you to remain calm, even when life's storms swirl around you, you can remain calm in the center. And if you have something to share, please do. Please contact us at info@airu.tv. And because sharing will help. And when you help others, you help yourself. It's a remarkable thing. So this is the type of thing that we're trying to do. And oh yes, I have almost forgotten, there is an ulterior motive for me to share. And that's, I would love you to buy this book. It's my story, Freedom, Your Path to Recovery. Because when you recover the power of choice, and it's freeing. Because you're no longer under compulsions to behave certain ways, to do certain things. You're free to choose. The power of choice was a gift that was given to me. And I give that gift to myself every morning when I remind myself that the power of choice is mine. And I cannot behave certain ways that I used to behave in because I had no choice. I have the power of choice today. Hello, welcome to this portion of Calm Down with James Eade. It's my anger management segment, and my senior anger correspondent is Rick Rosner from LA. Hello, Rick. How are you? Good to see you.
You too.
So, I'll go right into it. Do you have a gripe
Yeah,
or a
2
grump?
weeks until the election. And as we anticipated, we're getting flooded with a bunch of right-wing bullshit. And I'd ask everybody to not buy the bullshit. Don't believe it, but it's hard not to. I get shook. It's hard to tell the difference between bullshit and not. Um, but I'm going to talk about, I like numbers. I got a tattoo that says "Born to do math," um, and so I look at polls. But as they did in 2022, remember the red wave we were supposed to get in
Yes.
2022? That was based on bullshit polls released by bullshit pollsters, right leaning, right wing. Often pollsters don't just do political polls on the general public, they often manage Republican candidates' campaigns and
Mhm.
are able to tie their polling into that. But they so you have these super right-wing guys who release a ton of polls, and that's designed to discourage Democrats and get MAGAs psyched to go to the polls. And they're
Mhm.
doing it again this year, but even more so, where this guy Simon Rosenberg tracks this stuff, and he says that at least 70 fakey right-leaning polls have been released in the last month. And the poll aggregators, the places you go to see how Harris is doing, and where TV news people go to see how she's doing, have been flooded with all this bullshit. And their aggregators are naive. And
Yeah, my favorite one is 538,
yeah, they've
and
been hit with.
they aggregate.
I looked at 538 yesterday, and their 9 most recent polls were from the bullshit pollsters, not legit pollsters, but
Like that's
right leaning pollsters. Then
yeah,
I went to there's a site called The Hill, and their top 6 were from bullshit pollsters.
right, right.
And that
Yeah,
and that's
I
where you
noticed
get.
that too.
We don't know who's winning at this point because the aggregates are flooded with bullshit.
Right.
And that drives the narrative that the race is tightening and that Trump is pulling ahead. Plus, you got the poly market. The poly market is where it's illegal to bet from the US, but you can still do it. That's where people bet on who's going to win. And the price of the share it depends on the probability that somebody's going to win. And if you're willing to spend a few $1,000,000, you can change the probability. And now it has Trump heavily ahead because bullshit bucks have flooded that market too. And if you don't think people are doing that, you look at Elon Musk, the world's richest man. Musk spent $44 million on Twitter, which is now worth maybe 10 or 11 billion, and is now a right-wing site. And Musk is campaigning with Trump and is giving away $1 million a day to people who sign a petition to support the Constitution, which is really, he stands on stage and talks about this at Trump's rallies in Pennsylvania. I think it's that $1 million is for somebody in Pennsylvania every day, a different $1 million. And paying people to vote a certain way is illegal, but by saying he's paying people to support the Constitution, he's maybe skirting the law. People are looking into it, but anyway, this guy,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
addition to contributing $75 million to Trump's political action committees and kicking in $1 million a day for Trump voters, he's lost $34 billion in his effort to make Twitter a right-wing propaganda site. So if you think that these bros are not spending a ton of money to fuck with these prediction markets you're naive.
Right.
Uh,
No, and they learned a lot from 2020, and that's one of the things they learned.
yeah, and so if you want fairly untainted information, you can go to the University of Florida Election Project, which where let's it's University of Florida Election Lab, UF Election Lab, and they have early voting data from from 42 states plus DC that have begun early voting. And probably 18 or 19 million people have already voted, which is more than 12% of everybody who's going to end up voting by the end. And so you can, see that it's not bad for Harris based on this data, but so many people are going to this site now that it's crashing. So the one site with fairly decent real numbers is sometimes unavailable. Yeah. But I have it up from. I'm afraid to reload it in case it crashes again. But this is from an hour ago, and in the states that track party registration, Dems are outvoting Republicans by 14%, which tracks with 2020. That's about what it was back. And women are outvoting men by 10%, 55 to 45, which is a good sign because women lean towards Harris, men lean towards Trump. So if you want to feel a little better and not buy the pollster bullshit, that's a place to go.
And one other thing that made me feel better, and I'll get back to the polling numbers. It's a great topic, and it's one of those things that I haven't spent enough time thinking about. But it was aggravating to see these very biased polls being quoted in the aggregates that I checked, and not as thoroughly as you did, of course. But Trump's support in 2016 among non-college educated white males was like 33% better than his opponents. Mm-hmm. And then in 2020, it was 31%. And now they're saying it's 27%. So if he's losing those people, and it seems like he is, that's really been his base. And that's more significant than other things people have been talking about because they make up a larger portion of the voting population.
Yeah, I mean, there's some MAGAs like that. Trump famously said he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and not lose any votes. He said that in 2016, right. And then now he's talking about the size of Arnold Palmer's dick at a rally. Right. And so some voters, maybe not the hardest core MAGAs, are going to be disgusted with him. And, maybe they can't vote for Harris because they've never voted for a Democrat, but they just may not fill in that blank.
Yeah. Did you see Arnold Palmer's daughter's response?
Yeah, she said Arnold Palmer would never support a jackass like Trump.
Yeah, he was despicable to Arnold Palmer. The idea that I think, despite that many of the polls are saying that it's very, very close. I think it's going to come down to the swing states that we always talk about. So the national poll numbers don't really reflect the outcome in terms of the Electoral College, as we well know. But even though they're very close, I think she's going to win Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And so that can get her to 270, maybe on the number.
But. Well, looking at Florida, Trump won Florida in 2020 by 3.36%. And in the early voting, Dems in 2020, Dems outvoted Republicans by 1.3%. If you look at the early voting right now, Dems are outvoting Republicans by 6.1%.
Wow. Now, that's a significant change.
that's that's a 4.8% change, and day of voting is generally more MAGA-ish, but this might be enough to put Florida in play. I doubt it. Florida consistently disappoints us lately,
Yeah, I've
but
considered it a solid red state now, but to have it even in
I
play,
mean,
it,
this early voting stuff makes it pinkish,
mm.
maybe a nice mauve or fuchsia.
Now I'm going to have to look that up.
So, I mean, so stuff like, okay, so to get back to the pollsters, I was looking, there were some bad numbers from a company called Tip Insights. And occasionally I will Google them to a company to see if they're bullshit or not. So I Google them, and it comes up that their slogan is talent on loan from God.
Okay, well, there you go.
And you might know the guy who originated that slogan was Rush Limbaugh. So they're using Limbaugh's slogan. So then I go to their homepage and it's packed. It's got about 10 different editorials and articles, like just lambasting Harris, saying she's running an angry campaign. And here's what Trump needs to do to beat the piece of crap, Harris. It was just solid,
Right,
like
right.
hate for Democrats.
This
And
is the danger, that they're presented as a neutral,
right. And then
unbiased.
when I looked at the 6 most recent polls on thehill.com, 4 of them were from Tip Insights,
Wow.
because they release a poll every day now. And the deal is that means that they count 7 times as much if compared to somebody who's only releasing a poll once a week. Or in the last, now some of these aggregators say, yeah, we adjust for that.
Right.
But
That's
maybe, I don't know.
not if you're quoting them. Yes. And not if you're including them in your aggregates. And I do think that, if you could weight them, it's possible. But and it's a broader kind of thing that I thought your gripe originally was going to be about misinformation and disinformation. And there's been no question that Russia, for example, flooded the social media with, pro-Trump, anti-Biden type of language and quote unquote misinformation. We have clear evidence of that, and that's continuing. And why would Russia want to support Trump? I think it's because he's a useful idiot to them. They want,
Because he loves Putin, and so yeah, I've been arguing on Twitter with a woman named Jenna M. Scott, STOT, whom I believe does not exist, at least in the form she claims. Her picture seems to be AI. She joined 3 months ago. She says, she's a mom just concerned about things, and that's why she's voting for Trump. I Googled her. She has no other presence in the entire internet, and I think she's one of thousands of fake profiles.
right.
That, I mean, usually they have a number, like a slightly, you've got a regular name, but it's slightly misspelled, and then there's like 8 digits after it. I've found a zillion of those, but really those aren't gumming up. Maybe I've blocked enough of them, but like they're not gumming up my feed as much as I expected. But they're out there. There's a building, we've talked about it, in St. Petersburg, Russia, where they have the people who are generating the bullshit tweets that are supposedly from Americans, or if they're going to Britain, from Brits. I think that place is a party. I think it's full of really clever people, dozens of them. I think it's like a comedy writer's room. These are people who are happy not to be fighting in Ukraine.
Yes.
All day, and probably 24 hours a day, because you got to tweet at when the people in the country you're tweeting at are awake. So they
Yeah.
must have different shifts,
Yeah.
because, if they're all coming in at like, I don't know, 4 a.m., you're like, well, no, what Texas mom is tweeting at 4 a.m.? So anyway, I think they have great snacks. They have great craft services. When somebody comes up with
Oh, I bet.
a new bullshit line that everybody can use, like there's general merriment.
Yeah. And they probably banter about how to make it better, like comedy
Yeah.
writers would.
There was a site during 2020 that consistently pissed me off called 10 GOP, which was the Tennessee Republican Party official website. And they were always tweeting the most obnoxious stuff. And I'd be angry. And after the election, it came out that site was based in St. Petersburg.
Well, there you go. But I think, the idea of these sources being questionable, that they've learned their lesson about how to influence polls. They've learned their lesson about how to put representatives in the proper places to swing elections. If they don't get, if Trump asks you for 12,000 votes now, they might find it instead of having the principal people in there saying that I can't do that. And that sort of thing is but to me, it basically comes down to people know that he has been convicted of 34 felonies. People know that Trump Organization was convicted of fraud. So I do think that
there's juries in the past year. 5 grand juries indicted him. 2 juries found him liable for raping E. Jean Carroll with his fingers. And then there was the fraud jury that found him guilty. That's a lot of freaking juries.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, and with the E.G. Carroll stuff, he found that he had something like a $4 million settlement, but he couldn't stop disparaging her. He couldn't control himself. And so she sued him again, and it turned out to be 80 million or something like. I think I might have my numbers just a little wrong, but something in that ballpark.
Right.
So if he could have just shut up, he could have gotten away.
The first act, like,
76 million.
So the raping itself. Now, I took a bunch of women's studies, and according to the feminist perspective, rape isn't a crime of sexual passion. You don't do it to ejaculate. It's a crime of domination and power.
Right.
But the way Trump rapes, there's no chance that he'll ejaculate. There's no chance he'll get any pleasure because he rapes with his fingers, which you can't jizz out of your fingers. So it's a totally ridiculous, like, it's like, and he's even talked about it, the grab him by the pussy. Like, it's just pure domination. Does he jerk off about it later? I doubt he even does that. No. I have a theory of the best sex is sex that doesn't go all the way, that doesn't happen, because when it happens, a lot of the times it's kind of shitty. If it's like a one night stand, the person's drunk and they're chaotic and you're drunk and just it's bad. But if it doesn't happen, you can recast it. I've jerked off much more to sex that didn't happen than to sex that did happen, because you can have it. You can
idealize it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think Trump even does that. I think it's pure, like, malice.
Malice in the fact that I think he does get off without maybe getting off, but on like walking into a room full of young women who are dressing, and getting away with it. Like he can do anything.
Does he
like
think about that later? Does he think about that later? The room full of teenagers, Miss Teen USA, and imagine them swarming him and having, I don't know. But it seems like he does these, like, what does it gain him strategically to talk about Arnold Palmer's penis?
Right.
Nothing. But it gives him the satisfaction of being able to talk about whatever he frickin' wants.
Right. He can get away with it.
Maybe there is a strategy in that doing that and getting away with it. He thinks maybe it demoralizes his enemies. But I don't think he's that sophisticated. I don't know. I just think he's.
Well, it's just what, from the feminist point of view, they would say, and I would agree, it's toxic masculinity. He has this image of being what a real man, a he-man, like Arnold Palmer is. Now, Arnold Palmer was the real deal. Trump's a fraud through and through, and so he's pretending to be one of those guys, and the only way he knows how to do it is with bluster.
Yeah. Okay, two more things, if I can remember my points about the polls. Oh, yeah, in 2022, according to Simon Rosenberg, who's analyzed this stuff, they were just learning how to do the bullshit polls, and the bullshit polls were 3 or 4% off of the other polls, and they stood out. And they came out really close to the election, all in October. So they've learned since then that you want to make them look less, obvious. So you start earlier and you do more of them and you nudge them incrementally. So now the BS polls are only off of the legit polls to the extent that there are legit polls, which is questionable because, like the New York Times, Siena poll tries to be legit.
Right.
But to get 2,000 people to say yes to the poll, they had to call 194,000 people. So only one person in 97 said yes.
So it is self-selecting in a way. The people that are willing to take polls are,
which means you might, be talking to crazy people. But the other thing is that all the bullshit polls, if the election is close and Trump loses, which it likely will be, the bullshit polls allow Republicans to claim, well, the polls said Trump was ahead in all these states. They're making the case for election denial.
But all of these, especially the swing states, are within the margin of error. So, you can't draw a conclusion one way or the other and think it's anywhere near definitive.
There's a polling expert who I believe, partially because he makes me feel better, named Carl Allen. He was on Pod TV on Mark's show a couple of weeks ago. Okay. And he said, you don't look at the spread. You look at how close a candidate is to 50%. Because if you get 50%, you win. And the difference between this, I said, well, this election to me looks like 2016, where Harris is ahead of Trump. And this was before all the BS polls kind of got rid of that lead by the margin that Clinton was. And he said, no, they're totally different, because in 2016, there were 15% undecided voters. And they all flipped to Trump when Comey said the FBI was investigating Hillary again.
Right.
There were a ton of undecided voters in 2020. This time around, 3% undecided. Right. And he said it's better to have a 3% lead, 49 to 46, than have a 6% lead, 46 to 40, because at 49 you have just a little gap to make up to get there. So in 2016 and 2020, Trump outperformed his poll results because he picked up undecided voters. This time around, there are almost no undecided voters, and so he may not outperform his poll results.
Right. Very interesting. The other thing that gave me some relief, maybe this will help you, is one of the columnists who I greatly admire, Bret Stephens from the New York Times. He was a former editor in the Wall Street Journal and the Jerusalem Post, and he's a very staunch Republican, very, very conservative. But his writing is excellent, generally speaking. It was like William Safire wrote a conservative column for the New York Times for years and years, and I always read it. It was very well written. I feel like the same way. And he was saying that, never in a million years would he vote for Trump, but he couldn't bring himself to vote for Harris until yesterday. He announced he was going to vote for Harris.
That's great. And some of my favorite people are Republicans who became never Trumpers. Joe Walsh is a former congressman, and he's active on Twitter, and he's got a talk show. And when he was a MAGA, he was a full-on MAGA, and I was always like saying shitty stuff to him on Twitter. And then he became a never Trumper, and now I love the guy. I love Rick Wilson, who is a Republican. His life's work has been as a Republican strategist to help Republicans get elected. He became, a never Trumper when Trump, rose into prominence politically, and he's like, no, this guy's a piece of crap. If you were well informed, if you lived in New York,
for example, right?
Yeah,
you
knew Trump was kind of an a-hole, but you just ignored him. He was a guy that was a blowhard. He went on Stern and talked about all the models he was banging, and okay, so who cares? He had a TV show that you didn't watch because it was pretty boring, and you knew he was an a-hole. But you didn't talk about it because why? He's just one of like a zillion a-holes in public life.
One of the things that I always think, because part of his misery, which is evident, he's a miserable human being on multiple levels. But he always wanted to be accepted in New York society. And so he thought publicity would get him accepted. But the people in New York society don't want publicity.
Yeah, well, there's a show on HBO.
In the foot every day.
Yeah, there's a show on HBO set in like 1882 called The Gilded Age.
Yes,
and it's about that stuff. It's about like a rich family. They made their money in railroads and steel, and the wife is determined to break into society, and
but they were new money.
Yeah. And they have battling opera houses was the whole the plot of
right.
And my wife loves it. I'm okay with it. The costumes are crazy,
right?
And
how they dress up,
yeah,
and how they can spot someone who's not quite there, and not quite making it, and all the telltale signs that say what to say, when not to say, when to say it, and all those types of things. It was, I thought, well done from that point of view. But in any case, I think it's a long-running chip on Trump's shoulder that he was never accepted.
Well, he ran for president because of a chip on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
At the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which is a dinner that all the reporters in Washington throw for each other, and like thousands of people, a couple thousand people fill a ballroom.
Right.
And they give awards to each other, and then they have a comedian. And plus the president usually shows up and does a few jokes that have been written for him.
Right.
Well, in like 2012 or so, 2013, Seth Meyers was the comedian. And he ripped into Trump. This was in the middle of Trump being a birther, claiming that
Obama was not born in the United States.
He was born in Kenya or some crap, and where's his real birth certificate?
Right.
And Seth Meyers ripped into Trump for that. And I think he was at the dinner and just made a ton of fun of it. And then Obama got up there and made more fun of Trump. And Trump was infuriated. And at that point, he decided to run for president and try to fuck up Obama's legacy.
Yeah. Like Obamacare, which has been a tremendous success for ensuring people all across the nation.
But we've been talking for a long time. We've been going a half out. We should.
Oh my goodness! Thank you for calling that to my attention, Rick. I could have talked to you for much longer, but we will be back in touch. And
well, one more thing. You always ask, what can you do? What can I do? Yes, what can we do to calm down about this?
You should be the host of this segment.
Well, no, I never finish. But the deal is, my heart has been. I'll sit at the computer. My heart's going thampa, 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 thampa. I think the only cure is for election day to get here.
Yeah.
And to look at the early voting results, those are a little bit. And I might start doubling up on my blood pressure meds.
Okay. Yeah. And the other is to do something that's pleasurable, not what you're thinking.
Here,
But
I'll show you. I'll show you what I do. So,
okay,
um, Carol's like,
it takes
why
my
don't you
mind
get
off it.
away from the
Yeah.
computer and why don't you repair a micro mosaic?
Oh yeah.
Micro mosaics are these pieces of art from about 120 years ago. This is a
Wow.
mirror. I took out the mirror for
Yeah.
repair,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they're filled with teeny. These are all built from teeny little pieces of glass,
Yeah.
and I'll buy them kind of knocked around, and then I'll replace the glass, and it's
That's
very
beautiful, and that takes concentration,
yeah. So like
and it must be rewarding to
yeah.
build
So
something
that
pretty.
I'll do that to
Yeah.
calm down a little bit.
Great. On that, we will end the segment. Rick Rosner, our anger management correspondent, senior anger management correspondent from LA. Thank you again.
Sure.
All right. Rick is keeping me on my toes, running over time, not asking the questions of how you calm down. Oh my goodness. But in any case, thank you for watching this episode and stay tuned. There's always more Rick. Welcome to this segment of Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and I'm going to bring in a yoga therapist and yoga teacher, a man who's going to walk us through the chakras. And if you don't know what the chakras are, stay tuned. You're going to find out. Yudhithra, it's good to see you again.
Hello, my friend.
Hello.
Likewise.
And I hope I didn't, tell a tall tale there, but I think we're going to talk about the chakras today.
We are. We're going to continue talking about the chakras, and I wanted to start by sort of, again, and I may even do this every time because it's helpful if someone just tunes in on one show to have sort of the bigger context. And, that bigger context of yoga is that it is not, there is no religion associated with yoga. And the closest you can come in religions that sort of are drawn directly from yoga teachings is Hinduism, I suppose. And I say I suppose only because there is still within Hinduism direct references, but the Hindus are every bit as subject to the extremes that all religions tend to sort of bring out in humanity.
Mm-hmm.
As the very fundamentalist and the very liberal and so if you're looking at the Jews at the time of Jesus, it was the Essenes were they were the part of Judaism that were very spiritually evolved
Mm-hmm.
and very spiritually aware. In terms of Buddhism, um, uh, I've even seen articles about in Vietnam, I think it was, or Thailand, about Buddhist temples having wars between them, and the monks actually being at odds with one another. Whereas if you go to Tibet or northern India now, and the Tibetan Buddhism is extremely close to yoga in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the way in which it's expressed. So my point is only that there is a simple truth that is common to the core of all religions. And I mean, literally every true religion, these same basic principles are going to exist. Last season, we talked about the yamas and niyamas, for example. That was most of what we spent our time on last season. And the yamas and niyamas figure into the chakras in a very specific way. And that is to say that the individual chakras are very much like lenses through which our individual world is projected. And if most of our world is projected through the lowest chakra, It's going to be the root chakra, the uh, Muladhara chakra. If it's through that lens, everything's going to be pretty darn physical.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going to be pretty much a matter of the material world. And in our physical body, it comes down to our feet, our legs, our hips, how we move about through the world, how we're grounded to the earth. And the second chakra ends up being very much about the niyamas. That is,
Mm.
it is about how do I contain the sensual, creative energy and use it in its most productive way.
Right.
Because we all know what it's like to be with somebody or to be that person who is so stuck in material reality that they don't have any ability to think creatively.
Correct.
It's only what they can see.
Right.
There's even one state in our union, Missouri, or Missouri, as most people say, the show me state.
Right.
And it really encapsulates that whole idea that, if I can't see it, it's
It
not
doesn't
real.
exist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
But that second chakra is very much about this creative energy
Right.
that when it spills outward, we all know what overly sensual people look like.
Mm.
They are addicts to something or another, almost always. It almost always comes out that way.
Mm-hmm.
The third chakra, on the other hand, is really about self-control. It's about fire.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know what people look like when they have too much of this. They not only want to control themselves, they want to control everybody around them. And we all know what it feels like to be that person.
It's so funny that the fire element I would associate with being out of control, but it's about controlling.
Well, it's interesting if you take the elements of those first three chakras,
Mm-hmm.
the earth, the water, and the fire, what you end up making out of that are bricks.
Uh-huh.
You literally fire clay.
Yeah.
You get the clay and mix it with water, you
Yeah.
shape it, and then you fire it and you have a brick.
Yes.
And you can build stuff out of it, which is so
Right.
cool.
Right. Right.
But then we come to this heart center. This is beyond the scope of our class, but there's this one of the oldest epics in the entire planet is called the Mahabharata.
Right.
And it is the story of the evolution of consciousness. And on one hand, there's this family that devolves more and more into material consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
The other family that evolves into spiritual awareness. And the fourth chakra is about one of those good evolving members of the good family. But that heart center is about the ability to expand.
Right.
And anyone who has ever been infatuated, we call it falling in love. But anyone who's been ever infatuated with another person or a place or a thing, Jim, when I was 18 years old, I first traveled. I just turned 18, and I traveled to England to spend a summer at Southampton University. And as I look back, my primary motivation was not going to England. It was not Southampton University. At 18 in England, I could go to a pub and drink. And that was my heart's desire extending outward into a way that was not helpful, not beneficial.
Right.
The same is true if you've ever fallen in love with somebody and then they reject you. And what happens after that? The heart goes through all the series of emotions,
Right.
Resentment or anger, resentment. It goes on and on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it ends up becoming sort of uglier and smaller. And it's
Correct.
all in the heart.
We've all felt that, I'm sure. Yes.
Absolutely. When we come up to the throat center, that center is a center of calmness. So if we can get the fire in the belly, lifting the energy of the heart upward, the heart's energy becomes calm. And that combination of those 5 chakras coming up, culminating in a sense of gathering together with a sense of calmness, allows us to come up to chakra number 6, which is the spiritual eye, or the sixth chakra, or everything has a Sanskrit name. Kutascha Chaitanya is a spiritual name. And this is where the ocean of spirit, so you get these individual contributors like streams flowing into the river, coming up through the chakras, and then it empties into the ocean of spirit. And so these chakras are a powerful tool. But here's the thing, Jim, that I really wanted to point out. There is a tendency when we begin to consciously choose to improve ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
There is this false impression of making spiritual progress. I say it's a false impression. Not that it's bad, only that all we do is to expand our sense of what was always true. We're never learning something new.
I feel that that I'm resonating with that. It's sort of like we have this. We talk about a collective unconscious, where we have a collective super consciousness as well, and it's just tapping into that and remembering rather than learning something new. It's something we already know, already have, it's already been given to us, but we can't tap into it unless we do certain things in order to free ourselves from the material world, for example.
You just touched on a whole lot of things that could go in a lot of different directions, but I will say this process of remembering has a word, it's called smriti. It's a divine memory.
Yes.
And what we are doing is our awareness, rather than moving in a line and making spiritual progress, we are moving in an ever expanding sense of awareness.
Yes.
And what we are becoming aware of in yoga terms is called Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma sometimes is described as the eternal religion. I think a better definition of is that which is. It's not about proving or disproving. It's simply the truth of what is.
Right.
And as our awareness expands, we become increasingly aware of it. The chakras are just a system of energy that is the fundamental blueprint for what our bodies look like, what our the circumstances that we find ourselves in a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the individual karma that we carry with us that is in the chakras. Now, we have tools, lots of tools. Meditation is a great tool.
Yes.
Yoga postures are a great tool.
Right.
Prayer is a great tool. Learning from other teachers is a great tool. These are all wonderful tools. Pranayama, breathing exercises.
Breathing.
Yeah. Great tools, all of them. And I wanted to share with everyone another tool for today, which
Great.
is about sound. I mentioned it last week a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. So let's go ahead and just sit upright for just a moment.
All right.
You'll become the audience here for all of us. And so to locate chakra number 1, we use a physical origin, but that is sort of backwards. But using the physical body is where we are. So it's a good beginning point, and it points us to where the chakra is. But remember, the physical body emerged through that chakra. The chakra does not exist because of the physical body. So if you put your awareness in the pelvic floor and squeeze the muscles of the anus and the pelvic floor, squeeze, 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 mark that center of that tension. Now relax those muscles, but hold your attention there. And there is that first chakra.
Okay.
Go up about 1.5 inches and squeeze the urogenital muscles. Squeeze them tight. You're in front of the sacrum, more or less. And in the center of that tension, put your awareness. Now relax the muscles, chakra number 2. Come to the belly button, pull the belly button back, go behind the navel in front of the physical spine. There you have chakra number 3. If you relax the physical muscles, your attention can stay there. And that's chakra number 3. Coming up to the heart center. So in the front of your body, it's the breastbone. In the back of the body, it's the thoracic spine. And we're in front of the thoracic spine, but behind the heart. Squeeze your shoulder blades together. Put your awareness right there. That's chakra number 4. Now relax the physical body. Keep your attention there, and you are centered in the Anahat, or 4th chakra, heart center. Now come to the throat, tense your throat. And you're in front of the physical spine, behind the throat. There's chakra number 5, calmness. Now bring your attention to the point between the eyebrows, squeeze your eyebrows together, knit your eyebrows, knit your forehead. Hold your attention right there. And as you relax your face, put your attention, or if your attention is to the spiritual eye, you'll see a little burst of light there. You can try it again. Squeeze, relax, and light gathers. So those are the chakras, and there's a tool that we can use. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn my screen a little bit in this direction, and you'll see this funny looking little instrument here. It's called a harmonium. And so the harmonium is just a very easy way to play a note, put your attention at where we were just focusing, chakra by chakra, and vibrating that energy center.
Wow. Okay.
So sound being a non-physical form of energy, the chakras a non-physical form of energy, they can touch one another. We can also use our voices and chant the sound of Om, A-U-M, at each chakra. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what we'll do to finish up our time today. I know I'm sort of out of the screen. So if you want to go ahead and take you out of the screen.
Okay, gotcha.
So I've got the whole screen. There we go. So again, if you remember what we just did, which is to say that we squeeze the energy center at each of these locations, and we'll do that again, but I'm also going to play a note. And so this is a low G. If you squeeze the pelvic floor and relax, squeeze and relax, squeeze and relax. Now, within your awareness there, you may find that you can still feel a little bit of vibration going on even after the sound has stopped. We're going to go up to chakra number 2, so squeeze the urogenital muscles, just as we did before. And this time you can pulse, squeeze, relax, squeeze, relax, squeeze. And as you relax, feel this. You can even add your voice. Chakra number 3 is behind the navel, so pull the belly button back. Squeeze tight, tight, tight. Put your awareness in front of the physical spine. Then as you relax, feel this vibration, and again, match it with your voice as you focus to that spot in your body. Now coming up to the heart center, squeeze your shoulder blades together. Press the spine towards the back of the heart. There's a center, which is chakra number 4. Now coming to the throat, tensing, release, tense, release, tense. And as you release, now come to the point between the eyebrows, squeeze tightly. And as you release, lift your gaze to the point between the eyebrows. So I invite you now simply to close your eyes, to sit upright and relax. Hold your attention to that final place where we ended up, the point between the eyebrows. Notice that the breath will flow through you without any effort on your part. And that rather than following the wave of the breath, you can remain even-minded, centered, and uplifted at this point between the eyebrows. So this is the way in which we have brought the energy inward and upward through the chakras using sound, both the harmonium and our voices, to clarify, to awaken, to keep this energy moving inward and upward. And it's a powerful spiritual practice that is also extremely practical as well. So, Jim, if you would like to come back on.
That was wonderful.
That's what I have for today. And any
Thank you
questions
so
at all?
much. Well, the one thing I wanted to say, you were talking about the origins of and how ancient this is. And you know, when I was taught in school, we talked about the cradle of civilization was Mesopotamia, the Tigris and Euphrates, but there was also an Indus Valley region, and this was an ancient civilization. And you talk about a lot of the words of Sanskrit words. These are ancient words, and from that, I think, sprung Hinduism, Buddhism, but these Vedic teachings are present in many, and I just wanted to say that out loud and see if I'm tracking you.
You are correct, and by the way, those people who practiced what we now call Hinduism never called themselves Hindus.
Hindus, right?
It was Westerners, the British in particular, finding them living near the Indus River that ended up applying that name Hindus.
Mm-hmm.
And it has now been adopted. One of the beautiful things about India is that they are readily willing to adopt whatever works.
Mm-hmm.
And so for many of them, it felt fine to call themselves Hindus, as many of them do today.
Mm-hmm.
The harmonium I was playing on was brought to India by the British as a way of the British proselytizing the Indians, and they absorbed it perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
You can no longer find a harmonium that isn't made in India.
Right.
You know, they've totally taken over.
Right.
So yeah, you're very right. You do lead into another bigger topic, which is the yugas, which is
Oh yes.
there
Yeah.
are these 24,000 years cycles of ascending knowledge and descending knowledge,
Right.
dark age moving into an age of much light,
Right.
and always moving through these cycles. And it gets into the astrology of our galaxy in relationship to the center of the universe. And that's a big, big topic.
Right.
However, you do have very much the essence of things correct.
Thank you. And also, the rising of the energy is the rising of your awareness, the rising of your consciousness. And this, I wanted to make sure that we're not saying that the lower chakras are worse than the upper chakras. It's
Absolutely
all
not.
integrated when
Yeah.
you're fully integrated and fully aware, and so they all have their role. And
They do. And as we get into, starting next week, we'll actually begin to talk about chakras one by one.
mhm.
At every chakra, we think about them. The word chakra means wheel. The Indian flag has a spinning wheel on it. Now it goes to
I'll have to look at that again. Yeah.
it goes to Gandhi because he spun. Part of his whole India was growing the cotton, sending it to Britain, and then they had to buy back their cloth.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and what part of what Gandhi did was to say, we're growing the cotton, we can make our own cloth, and so he began to spin his own thread from which was made the cloth. That was part of his movement to free India from British rule.
Right.
And of course, he was successful. But the chakra has a deeper meaning, or the wheel has a deeper meaning, because each of that wheel is called a chakra. It spins.
Mm.
And so each
Right.
of these centers spins, and it's much more like the spin of an electron than
Right.
it is like the spinning of a wheel.
Right. Right. Very, very good. And it also reminds me that no state is permanent. It's changing.
Yes, there we get into the quantum mechanics.
We don't want to get it too far afield. But thank you. I want to thank you so much for this sound, introducing sound into the equation. It's very useful for me.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, again, we'll talk about the individual chakras starting next week, and each one has a lot, positive and negative potentially, but we always use the potential to rise. So, thank you, my friend.
Thank you. I'll take you backstage and say goodbye to the viewing audience. Thank you again. Yudhithira has taught us so much in so little time, and I want you to come back. And next week we'll get into the chakras, individual chakras, one by one, and we'll see where that takes us. And who knows, they might raise our consciousness. Welcome to the final segment of Calm Down. And I want to introduce to you, my loyal listeners and viewers, Divya Lovewise, that wise yogi. And I would like you, at the end of every show, I'm a little bit agitated and worked up and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if there's something that you could do to calm me down. Could you just say goodbye to us in any way that you see fit?
Sure, I would
Oh,
love to.
I will take off and let you do that. Thanks again.
Okay. Well, bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, feeling your feet on the floor and letting your hands rest in your lap. Palms up or palms down is a great way to start bringing yourself back into center and focus with your own divine energy and letting go of anything that might have wanted to stick to us throughout the day that may be energy we don't want to carry throughout the day. So, having this basic position, feeling grounded, even closing your eyes, and taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one of the ways we can bring ourselves back to center is observing with our senses what we can feel, the temperature of the air in the room, observing any sounds that you hear. Noticing any smells in the air. And then bring your awareness to your breath. As though you're watching it from the inside out. Watching the inhale wash into the body. And watching the exhale wash out of the body. Just like the waves of the ocean as they wash onto the shore. And if you find your mind still wandering, you can even place one hand on your lower belly and one hand on your heart so that you can feel with your hands this breath washing in and washing out. And with your mind's eye, visualize this inhalation and exhalation as an internal shower, clearing away your energy so that it's refreshed, it's rejuvenated, and it's restored. Releasing your hands into your lap, just give yourself a few seconds of pause in this return to peace, enjoying it. When you are ready, you can open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes, feeling grounded in your body, grounded in the best part of yourself, and you can go out into the world and carry that best part in the forefront of your mind and your heart.